So we're currently live. Welcome to me eating a candy bar live. Um, um, Sorry to make you miss happy hour, Jose. Have you got a beverage of choice?
I have two. I have this awesome cider from the land of your people, Angry Orchard.
Ah, you got the ginger. They bastardized it. You can't just put ginger in stuff.
It's great. It's exactly what you want, right? It's dry. It's shitty. Just like all ciders.
No, I mean I can't complain about it. I've currently got a strongbow, and this stuff is not okay. I drank all the good stuff, so we're down to that now. Okay, so we have an IRC channel. If you want to go jump in there, if you don't, then also fair enough.
Did we jump in there?
I generally keep an eye on the IRC channel just because no one ever uses the Q&A system, or rarely uses the Q&A system. So yeah, use IRC to chat, and I'm going to have the Q&A tab open. So if anyone wants to talk to us, ask us questions, then they can use the Q&A feature of Google Plus, whatever. Just as a heads up, it's currently like midnight, and I am fading fast. So on that note, we should probably get going.
How does this work?
This does currently feel like work. Hang on, I'm trying to write some notes. Fuck off.
While we're waiting for Phil, I can show you my cat.
Yeah, get that cat out.
All right, here she goes. Camila, say hi to the camera. Say hi to the camera. Don't attack me. Say hi. All right. Yeah, you can get out. There you go. You had a cat, and she scratched me. That's great.
That went really well.
Killing it.
Did that cat just show you his boss? Sorry, I forgot about the other thing that I have to do. It takes a second. Otherwise, you don't get notes. Okay. Hang on, what's everyone's name?
Phil, you're the worst.
Shut the hell up. Oh, this gets edited off the start as well, but it will be forever on the video, so that's always fun. Okay. The Human Torch was denied a bank loan. So, hello everybody. Welcome to episode 33 of PHP Town Hall. We're currently recording on November 19th, so you'll probably get this by December. Ha! Welcome. So this episode we've got Jose Gonzalez and Brian Crow. For some reason I can't remember your name, Jose, even though I see you far, far too often in real life. So
I almost slept on my bed once.
yeah, that almost happened. And then I decided that going back to your apartment would be the worst mistake of my life.
Very Halloween, huh?
Yeah, it seemed like you guys had a hell of a week the other week. Just seeing what happened on Twitter and stuff. Oh my god.
Well, basically, I was kicked out of my apartment because I was busy being deported. I might be exaggerating with both of those things, but I had to move out. And I just turned up at Jose's apartment with a backpack the size of me and put on the only outfit I had, which was a suit, and then pretended that I was Archer. So I just walked around making sexual innuendos and drinking martinis all night.
TLDR.
Basically. But yeah, what have you guys been up to recently?
Go ahead, Beekman.
Oh, what have I been up to recently? I don't know. So recently I decided to take the Monga package under my wing, which is under the PHP League. It's kind of been abandoned for, well, not abandoned, but not taken care of so well over the last year or so. And that's pretty much what I've been doing recently, or is what's new.
Is that it? I mean, I was going to get to that on the topic list, but that's just been your entire life for the last week or two.
That is it. That is it. It's really sad.
I'm glad that you bring the dedication. That level of dedication was very much required. So I'm really bad at introducing people in real life and on podcasts. I forgot to mention that you're both involved with the Cake PHP project. You're both on the core team, right? So Brian, how did you get involved with that?
So basically, I started using Cake about 3 years ago, no, 4 years ago for a job I started world around then, and yeah, ever since then I kind of got more and more fascinated with it, and I started out with basic things as I was going over the documentation and whatnot, things that weren't necessarily clear, or even things as simple as typos. I would go ahead and you know, fix those, or reword things that made a little bit more sense, because obviously whenever an open source project operates at an international level, you have a lot of people writing you know, English from various degrees of knowledge of English, I guess. Yeah, writing. So yeah, that's basically how I got started. Just like clarifying things, and slowly I don't know, just kind of a snowball effect. I got more and more involved. Went to my first CakeFest conference back in actually too that long, and I just felt like I got a really warm welcome from the community, and you know, I really appreciated that, and ever since I've been helping out where I can. So.
So how long have you been involved?
So I got right access to the documentation repository back in January. So
You're a newbie. You're a newbie.
yeah, total noob, man. Yeah. So yeah, I got right access to the documentation repository. Yeah, back in January. I think it was like January 2nd. Woke up with a massive hangover from New Year's Eve, and I was like, oh, what the hell is this? So that was interesting.
They've roped me in. What the hell did I agree to?
Yeah, exactly. And then basically 2 months later, I got in, you know, I was invited into, you know, our little IRC channel or whatever, and then actually Jose here was like, what the hell is Brian doing here? You know, there was no official vote for him being around here, so that kind of facilitated that. So.
Nice. And Jose, what are you? How are you involved? You've been around for a damn long time, right?
Yeah, so it's been like probably 6 or 7 years since I started using Cake originally. And the only reason I used it was because I was looking around for frameworks that would help me be a good developer. So at the time, I barely knew any PHP, but I knew I needed to know a framework. So I looked at Symfony, and the tutorial was way too long. It said it took 28 days, and I didn't have time for that.
Hey, no one got time for that.
The Rails tutorial is 25 minutes, so that must make it better, right?
Well, that's the funny thing. I had a Mac, and Rails didn't work on my Mac. So then I was like, well, Ruby's out. That's literally what happened. Cake was the only one that actually worked on my Mac, and so I was like, all right, this is cool. This is awesome. It works. And after like 2 or 3 years, I got heavily involved in just general open source stuff. Open source a lot of things. Started contributing to a little bit to documentation. They 3 years ago gave me write access to the core framework, and up until maybe 2 months ago, my 5 commits were 1 commit removing a feature, and then 5 commits trying to fix tests.
Well played.
Yeah, so yeah, that's how I've been involved. I do a lot of community support stuff.
At least you guys had tests, so that's a good start.
Well, yeah, they yelled at me. Why did you commit this to the core? This isn't master right now. That's not even where you commit things. So.
You got schooled. So you guys didn't have a contributing .markdown or something. You just I don't know, just throw it over there. That'll probably work.
Well, they made a mistake and giving me commit access, so that's not my problem.
Yeah, I still don't know why nobody's created some sort of service where you have to prove that you're sober before your commits get merged in. I don't know why that's.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's like Travis CI, but math problems.
That's being able to open your computer and turn it on.
Or maybe GitHub needs to have a thing for breathalyzer that we have to plug into your computer.
Yeah, so none of us
as well.
None of us are condoning drinking. Please drink responsibly or not at all. But yeah, sometimes people aren't necessarily in the best way to commit code. Moving on, before we get shouted at for endorsing drinking. So I saw on Twitter that Cake 3 is nearly out, so that's something we're going to talk about today, I guess. Pretend that I'm someone that doesn't know anything about Cake, because I don't, even though I was invited to speak at your conference. I don't know all that much about Cake, but what's happening in 3? Does anyone? And that's a really big question, but what are the things that you're like most excited about? Anyone?
Go ahead, Brian.
In regards of it almost being out, so we're at beta 3 right now. The initial plan was to have 2 beta releases and then 2 release candidates before we release it as stable. But currently we're at beta 3, and the reason for that is there's a little bit of discussion about validation, and I'm not exactly sure about the specifics. It has something to do about when validation occurs, but that will introduce some API breaks. So we did decide to go ahead into beta 3, which just was released a couple days ago. But if everything goes well, after beta 3, we have a release candidate 1, maybe a release candidate 2, and then we're looking at a stable version. So that's kind of where we stand with the 3.0 release. So we're looking at about a couple months now, but we're kind of at the point where this is, I guess, theoretically or hypothetically the last release where we're going to be introducing API breaking changes. So we're kind of at the point where it's maybe safe to maybe start a new idea or side project with the framework and not really have to worry about keeping up with too many things, keeping up with any API changes, or maybe like the app skeleton changing for whatever reason. So it's kind of where we stand in regards of the release, at least.
Do you guys follow Semver for your versions? So if people start working with 3 anything, once it gets to RC1, then theoretically it'll be solid.
Yep. We've been following Semver since the 1.3 days. I think like every once in a while we'd accidentally break something in like 1.3. The 2.x line has been pretty stable and just adding features. Whenever we break something, there's usually like another patch that says, oh, we fixed this. New features come out in the minor releases for us. So we've like added an event system in the 2.1 series. We revamped certain things in like 2.2 for specific event stuff. Added a couple like view-based features in 2.2, so you can use more like Ginger syntax if you're ever familiar with the Python templating language. But generally speaking, we follow Semver. So I figure at this point at least, if assuming that we don't change anything other than the validation, 3.0 RC1 will be pretty much what 3.x will look like. And then from there, we're just going to add new features.
Sorry, I was a little bit distracted there. Brian, I muted you because it's not actually your microphone making noise; it's actually Jose's, so you can unmute yourself. But we can edit that out if I take a note that at some point. What the hell time is it? 12:26. 12:26. Edit. It's not making noise now. Thank you very much. So okay, so it's Semver, awesome. So how much change is there like to be between version 2 and 3? Are you going to be stuck with a kind of Angular, Python, major change, everyone's scared of upgrading situation, or do you think the community will be kind of on board and quick to upgrade? Brian?
Yeah, so we do have a upgrade shell, which will handle a decent amount of the work. I personally haven't tried upgrading any of my 2.0 applications to 3 yet, but from what I hear, Mark Story recently used it on the debug kit plugin, which is kind of our toolbar for getting metrics about the response times around your application, et cetera, et cetera. But he said that it pretty much takes you 80% of the way there, and what would have been a couple of days of work, he was able to knock out in 2 or 3 hours. One of the core members, Mark Scherer, or also known as Do Your Mark, has really been, he's always been really dedicated to the upgrade stuff. So in terms of upgrading, the shell, from what I understand, will take you a lot of the way there, and if you're kind of familiar with Cake's conventions, and you've used at least, Cake before, the last 20% should be trivial. I don't know if you...
Sorry, I was muted. I'm not very good at microphones. I thought I'd have worked this out after 33 episodes. So it's not a fuck you, start again situation. It's like you'd have to do a bit of work, but it's that's good.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is that models previously were like this kind of all-encapsulating idea around both, a database table and any individual row within it. But nowadays, within new ROM, we have tables as one idea and entities as another idea. So those have kind of been split. So if you have any kind of I don't know, let's say like a virtual field, which is basically a modified SQL concat, things like that won't necessarily translate right out the box, but things like setting up associations and whatnot will be a little bit easier in that regard.
That's cool. So is there like one major feature in CakePHP that you think would excite the hell out of people? Anyone?
One thing I do like that I've sort of been prototyping before was the ability to use CakePHP as a micro framework. I always laugh at every single framework that's like, oh yeah, we can do micro frameworks too, it's awesome. Just like replace all these like 10 different classes or strip out everything in our routing layer or whatever. And so I prototyped that in the 2.x series, and it should be fairly trivial to do that, the same thing in 3.x, where you just pass in a callable. Not that anyone should ever write their application like that, and not that anyone should ever tell anyone to write their application like that, but it's at least an easier way for us to kill benchmarks, where CakePHP just like taking 3x as long as Slim, for instance.
So when you say it can be a microservice or a micro framework, sorry, you're saying that you can just have callbacks in the routing layer instead of sending them off to a controller class, or what do you mean?
Yeah, that's correct. So for instance, most larger frameworks have a controller layer, a model layer, a view layer, and once you render your response, that goes through the view, whatever. But sometimes all you need to do is respond with JSON, and you can just use JSON and code. And you don't necessarily need to instantiate an entire controller stack or whatever. So rather than doing all of that stuff, just doing it in the routes for stuff like health checks, for instance, is pretty useful.
Sweet. Yeah, can you do other things like rip out? So I'll start again. Something I was doing with Rails. I'm currently working with Rails a lot, which, don't judge me, wasn't my choice. We're working with one of the core contributors for Rails, so that choice was made kind of before I got there, but whatever. Working with Rails. And we're building an API, and one of the things that I actually found pretty cool about Rails that I didn't realize you could do is that you can just rip out all these middlewares. So things like sessions and cookies and view systems and everything. You just comment out one line of code for each one of those middlewares, and then there's just nothing, no session or cookie management stuff runs at all. Can you disable things like that in Cake to make it quicker to run if you don't need those features?
So I know you can disable all of the middleware that we have, even in the current version. One of the things that you couldn't previously really hack around was the fact that you need to return a response object from like some other middleware or whatever. But you should be able to do that with the new routing system. And all the other stuff is just sort of either attached to the controller or attached to the model. So if you don't use it, it shouldn't be instantiated. So if you're simply like echoing out your response and then exiting in your controller, it will never actually get to your view layer. That's not something that a developer needs to worry about.
Sweet. So I reckon we should move on to a new section called Let's Judge RFCs. That was just come up with it there, so it's not a great name for the section. I will improve it, but we should call them like, I don't know, keep it or bin it or something. Remove PHP for constructors. This I'm going to assume is a bin it from everybody. If you have a class called filter and a function called filter, then in PHP 4 style that would be a constructor, and it currently still kind of works. So ripping that out, I'm assuming everyone would agree, would be a good thing.
Pretty good idea, I think. We haven't supported PHP 4 constructors in a while in the framework. And when I started using PHP, I was honestly confused as to why PHP had two different constructors, and I didn't know which one to use in which situation. So I was like, all right, well, I'll just use underscore construct. It seems to work.
Yeah. Yeah, I was using PHP 4 when I started. I think I started on like 4.3.2 or something, and yeah, I remember the old way of doing it, and then I ran into that problem a couple of times when I just happened to end up calling the method the same name as the class, and I didn't really want it to be the constructor. I just kind of forgot that that would happen. You can probably argue that that was incredibly bad design decisions to have a class with a filter, have a class with a method as the same name, but I was 15, so shut up. I am pretty glad they're gone. Oh, they're kind of gone, but they still also kind of work. So yeah, getting rid of those would be a big win, I think.
I didn't know they were actually a thing still. Like, why would anyone? I thought they ripped them out in PHP 5.
I think it throws an E strict right now. I haven't read this particularly closely, but there's currently an RFC to remove them, so I have to assume. Hang on. PHP
No, it doesn't raise anything right now.
PHP 5 preserved the ability to use PHP 4 style constructors in some cases. The strangeness of when the constructor is and isn't used increases the mental model for programmers. Hang about. Oh, okay. So if it's a class in the global namespace, in the global space, then it will use old style. If it's in a namespace, then it won't. That's a fun one. If you have a constructor, if you have underscore construct, then it obviously won't use the other one as a constructor. But if you define, if you have a PHP 4 style constructor, and then you have a PHP 5 style constructor defined afterwards, so like lower down in the class, then it will raise an E strict.
Oh my god.
That's a lot of different things. So the RFC proposes there's two changes. So PHP 5.7 should show an E deprecated whenever they notice a PHP 4 style constructor. And then PHP 7 should just remove them. So just if it sees a function, if it sees a method name that matches the class name, it should just completely ignore that, and it's just a regular function. That sounds like a no-brainer to me. Just like get rid of that extra semantic meaning, mark it as deprecated, and then remove it in a later version.
Can we bet on how many no's this RFC is going to get? Because that would be a I bet like the voters say no.
But it breaks backwards compatibility. Yeah, so I'm gonna say that that's gonna go in because I want it to go in, but I have no idea. I have no idea if it'll actually make it past or not. Maybe this section should become like a betting situation where we bet whether they're going to go in or not, and then by the time the next podcast comes around, we can tally up the scores and see who won. That would all be great things for me to think about while I'm not on air, so that we can actually make this look like it's vaguely been researched ever. Anyway, next RFC. I believe this one's been withdrawn, so this one doesn't really you don't get to bet on this. Did you see the one about read-only properties?
I have not.
The proposal pretty much was you can add a read-only property, so public, read-only, whatever. It allows the cannot talk today. It's currently midnight, so I'm a little bit knackered. It allows the property to be read from the normal scope of its visibility. So a public read-only property is readable from the public scope. Yeah, so you can just read it and you can't change it, which to me it kind of seems like you should just define a getter and not define a setter. Like, I don't know if we need this. What do you lot think? You got the RFC here?
Yeah, let's see it.
Which one's this?
So the author Andrea Folds is in IRC right now. This is the read-only properties, and I put a link in the IRC.
Yeah, there it is.
Sorry, I thought I put a link out to most of these. I mean, so I suppose my answer of like, well, you just define a get a get method and not define a set method. That kind of assumes that everyone's using accessors and setters for all of their properties, right? Like we have these public properties, but everyone frowns on them. Like you should never use a public property for anything, you know?
Well, something adults use public. Everyone read, everyone write. Not a big deal. I think protected is about as private as you should get in your code, and if you want something that should be read-only, use a private property, call it a day, and have your developers extend your classes. But otherwise, it sort of just makes extending a class or adding functionality weird.
Yeah, for sure. Private makes life a little difficult, unless you don't want someone to override it. That's a separate topic. But
I've also never seen read-only properties in any language. Maybe I'm just like not familiar with any language other than PHP.
Yeah.
Is there any other like reasonable language that has read-only properties?
Not that I know of. So yeah, Andrea in the IRC is saying getters and setters are a pain to write, basically. But I don't want something as complex as that old rejected properties proposal. Oh yeah, so the whole getters and setters proposal kind of came and went, and it was really, really complex. And so yeah, you could like define properties and then define getters and setters on those properties. So not just making an actual method called getFoo. It would be like a proper syntactical thing where you define a get or set on that property. It was pretty complex, and it was kind of voted out. So I think Andrea was just trying to find an alternative to that, but it seems like the read-only approach didn't go ahead. I mean, another thing is that if you're making a public read-only property, then maybe just make it constant. I suppose
that's what I was thinking as well.
that would assume that you know what the value is going to be when the class is initiated. So I guess if you want to have a property and then define it and then put that value into the read-only, that's also a bit weird. So I guess it ignores read-only within the class, but then outside they can read it. Seems a bit odd. Well, maybe we just don't know what we're talking about. That seems incredibly likely. So on to the next one. We were talking about this one already, so it won't be quite such a wait while we all frantically read it. The default constructors. Brian, have you seen this one? I know Jose has.
I just opened that right before we started, but I didn't get a good chance to read over it. Why don't we break this down, huh? I
like this section. It should be called like "Watch as 3 developers desperately try to read an RFC and form an opinion based on not very much information." It's a bit of a mouthful for the.
You'll never guess what happened next.
Never guess what happened next. They talked out of their ass.
Programmers hate this.
So let's all just open up the Rust documentation, then talk about Rust for half an hour.
Oh, crap! Not again.
I like this. So I've seen this sort of thing come up a lot of times. So default constructors is all about, when you have a constructor and then you list out your constructor dependencies and then you assign those to properties with the same name. So you have to go through, and the example here is cow is a class. It has protected owner, and so you have to make a constructor that accepts owner and pass the owner variable into the owner property, and then that's done. I've seen a lot of people try to simplify the constructor thing because they get bored of having to write properties and then define those same, passing them through. I'm a little bit scared of trying to bypass that because it kind of assumes that constructors always work in the same way, and that like the way that you happen to be using them, which is a very common way of, here are all the dependencies, I'm going to shove those into properties now. It kind of assumes that that's always the way that everyone does everything, and it's a little bit auto-magical, I think, to try and automatically create a default constructor that will just accept values and shove them into properties,
So I read it and I was like, all right, fine. This seems like a good idea. Having the developer just say, oh, when I upgrade a package, the constructor, if I had called it before, will always just work. Um, I don't know if you can call like a parent like another method, which would be the logical extension of this. But assuming that that's not a problem, when I upgrade a package and I just want it to work automatically, if my tests already don't catch the fail from the constructor not being called, then this is not going to help at all. Like, it's, if anything, it's just going to have the developer think, oh, my tests are going to pass, or I don't need tests for this, it's just going to work. And they'll upgrade a package. The constructor will be magically called because now it exists, and their code will break in production. So I don't necessarily see this as a great idea
Oh,
because of that.
yeah. Yeah, I think I actually misread what this RFC was about, which proves that this section is no good. It does remind me a lot of another. It does remind me a lot of another RFC that I think the same author put in a while ago. So ignore everything that I just said about it. Yeah, I know what you mean. When you try to call parent construct and there isn't one, then it falls on its ass. So you're gonna have to go and put an empty one. So what's the downside to that, Jose?
So like if there, the example here is that if you have like a cow class and it has a constructor that does some stuff and it extends animal class does not have a constructor, and your code works fine. And you call parent construct, right? Just automatically. Let's assume that that works. And then you upgrade the animal class to now have a constructor, right? Any code that you wrote for the cow class will definitely not know anything about the new constructor in the animal class. And so if this is a package that you're upgrading from and it's like a minor release or a patch release, I can definitely see this being a problem where like a major package adds a constructor somewhere and every single like subclass of that in like other packages just breaks because they're just like, oh, okay, I can upgrade a minor release or a patch release. Not a big deal. They won't break that. And this can be one of those like BC changes that people would introduce, not assuming that it'll break something, and then break a lot of things. And so I don't see that it's actually fixing anything, because anything that would fix would be caught by automated testing of your code.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, this seems just like it seems lazy. You know, I want to be able to call parent construct, and whether that method exists or not, I want it to not error. Maybe you just shouldn't call it if it's not there. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's for when you upgrade a package or you refactor a parent class, and then you wanted to, before you called it and you didn't have to worry about whether it existed, and now you call it and now it exists. So now your class is going to change its functionality, and you probably won't notice.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think it's a bad idea.
Well, it's still in draft, so what's really funny is whenever I see a promising RFC, I'm always like, come on, guys, this is the time when you vote for the awesome thing. This is, for once, just let's have this awesome feature. And then whenever I see an RFC that I'm not particularly excited in, I always think to myself, wow, those fuckers always block everything anyway, so it's fine. It's a little bit selective hope there. We'll see how it goes.
I also didn't know that like if you called a method in the constructor of a class, and that class didn't have a constructor, that method wouldn't be called. So they have an example here where if you have function bar and you pass it into class foo doesn't have a constructor, bar doesn't get called. I wouldn't have thought that at all.
Oh. Yeah,
that's fun.
That doesn't sound great.
I really hope someone's not depending on that as like a feature in the language, because that just seems horrible.
Yeah, I don't want that. So it turns out I've been really out of the loop, I think, because I've been looking through this RFC page today, and PHP 5.7 is now being listed as a thing. So I turned off my internals mailing list like emails a while ago because I just couldn't even with those people. I just got really fed up of trying to read that stuff. But they were still talking when I was last paying attention. There was still some discussion about whether PHP 5.6 was going to be the last in the 5 branch, or whether 5.7 was going to be a thing. But it looks like they've started to, start lining up functionality for the PHP 5.7 branch. So it looks like that's actually going to happen. Andrea in IRC, if you could let us know what the answer to that is, that would be great. But 5.6 has got some pretty cool functionality in there right now, and sorry, 7 has a whole bunch of awesome stuff. Have you seen the null coalesce operator? Anyone got any opinions on that?
Which was that question mark colon or something? Or question mark
No,
Yeah.
it's basically usually it's just or in other languages. So in Ruby, it's foo equals bar or 0. It's like a default value. We kind of have had it in PHP, but the short ternary is a bit shit. So if you do like get, or the example they have here is username equals get user question mark nobody. So if you try using a short ternary, then it will just try to like grab the value, and then if it's like an index in an array, then it will just go error, this thing doesn't exist. Whereas the coalesce operator will actually do more like an isset. If that makes any sense? No, doesn't make any sense.
I've never used anything like that in any other language. It just seems like it just looks bad to read.
Yeah, I mean, I know. Like I said, every other language uses or. So in Ruby, you just do,
I don't like that either. That just looks stupid.
What?
Because when you're like reading it, and you're like, okay, fine, variable equals this or this. It's like, well,
Yeah.
what do you mean or? It's either that or you have some other like. What do you mean or?
Right. What would you like to drink? I'll have wine or beer. Like, yeah, all right. So,
In this one, like, what does with being missing in the array mean, right? They have an example: with equals image data with coalesce 100, right? That like an is set or an array key exists.
yeah, well, it does say is set. So if it's null, then it will. So not any faulty value will work basically. So it's not going to freak out on a 0 or freak out on a false. It's only going to be like missing or null. It's gonna be plain basically.
I'm gonna forget that. My code is gonna be very bad on this. Oh, let me just put a null in here. It'll work. It'll be fine.
Yeah, maybe not ideal. So not a fan of the coalesce.
Let's just drop PHP and start using Python. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. I've been using Go recently, and it's like incredibly limited in its syntax, and therefore quite forceful in what you have to do. So if you want, you can't even do ternary. There's no short ternary. There's no ternary at all. It's I'm going to grab this value from like a get parameter, and then if this equals empty string, then I guess set the value, and you have to write out the full if thing. And if you have like if this, try this, if it's still not a value, you have to keep on chaining up your if statements, and you have like 10 lines of code for that shit. So I guess not every language needs it, because Go works perfectly fine without these things. But I mean, I quite like the fact that PHP is getting some syntactic sugar. We've been pretty low on sugar for a while, and now we're getting some nice things. I kind of like it.
I'd be happier if we had like monkey patching of the language. Let's do that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Then we can define our own operators. It'll be great. We can define this in the userland code.
You can't trust these people. They'll do anything. They'll do madness.
No, the Rails people seem to do just fine. Don't you remember active support? That thing was great.
I
It's
remember.
just monkey patch string.
I remember seeing lots of articles from various communities about monkey patching where swearing is 95% of the article. It doesn't seem to be a good idea.
Have you seen this object key RFC?
No. What's this?
So you can basically the RFC is that you can use objects as hash keys or like or array keys. So if you have an associative array, and let's say you have an object, like a record in your database, and you want to use that as the key value, and then like something else as the value, then you can do that, as long as the object has a hash method.
Oh, I think I saw about that. Yeah, so you can pass in an object instead of just a string or a number. Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyone got a use case for when you'd ever need that or want that?
So I definitely used this recently in Python. Because you can define an __ hash method for an object, and as long as it's hashable, which that's what it means, then you can use it as a value in the dictionary. It was useful for getting a string representation of an object in which there were multiple entities in there, and I needed them to be a set. And it was otherwise impossible to get a set of objects because they weren't hashable.
Huh. I don't know.
So
I don't
you
know what that
can
means.
look at it by saying like I have an organization, right, in my database, and I'm adding a bunch of users to the organization. You don't want like the same user added 3 times to that organization. It's just one time, right?
Yeah.
So that means you want to be able to hash that user in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a database, it's pretty easy. It's an ID. But if you have a record in like if you have an object in any programming language, then you can't just hash it because it doesn't have a hash value, at least in PHP. So you can't put it in like a set,
Right.
Which we don't have in PHP really, but it's pretty useful when you do have that feature.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I did that in Go yesterday, actually. I was importing a vehicle list, and I wanted to make a hash of the CSV string just to make sure I didn't have multiple of the exact same thing in Elasticsearch. So I guess you just build up an array and keep on shoving them in there instead of looking for an ID number, which you might not have. Then you can just shove the entire object in, and it will just do that, right?
Yeah.
Sweet. That makes perfect sense. I need you guys to explain things like I'm 5 today, it seems. I'm not totally sure. I think I might still be jet lagged. That's my excuse, and I'm going with it.
When did you fly in?
I've been back in the UK since Thursday, so nearly a week. But I spent...
Jet lagged or drunk?
Well, I have also been drinking for most of the day. That's not the point. No, I basically spent like a week being up at 5 a.m. I went to PHP Argentina, which is fucking awesome. But I went to do some consulting in Uruguay and had to get up at 5 a.m. for a ferry after spending the entire day drinking on a farm. So that was hard. And every single day since then, I've been awake at 5 a.m. to go to the visa office, go and do this, go and do that. I'm just dying on my feet, man.
The visa drama continues. Oh my god.
The visa drama is nearly done. I'm sat here waiting for my passport to come back to me, and as soon as I got my passport, I'm back in America. And until they fire me, I've got a visa for a really long time.
Do they give you a box like they did last time with all the visa paperwork?
Yeah, dude, the box was about that big. You saw me carrying it. That was the box I had to bring. They didn't look at any of that. I'm carrying around like a million slaughtered trees in this box. It's insane. I carry it around on my... It takes up... My traveler's backpack is like this big. It's fucking huge. And my box of visa papers takes up most of my bag to the point where I have to go to Argentina and London, which are 2 slightly different weather systems. And I haven't got any space for any clothes because I've just got this fucking massive visa. Carrying it around through London, through the rain, hiding it under my shirt so it doesn't get ripped apart, holding it for 2 hours in the queue. They don't look at a single pissing page of that paper. I'm so annoyed. I've carried it to 3 different continents and they didn't even vaguely look at it for a single second. But anyway, I've pretty much got my visa now, which is yay!
Wait, is this an American visa?
Yes.
They're letting you back in?
Yeah. Yeah, your appeal did not work.
Damn it.
Should have went the marriage route, man.
Oh yeah. The mayor says that as long as you're working in New York City, then you can pretty much stay, whether you're legal or not. Trouble is, I'm not working because I don't have a visa. So until I get my visa, I can't work for anyone. So I can't be an illegal alien until after I have a valid visa. Doesn't really work. On to the next thing, because I'm about to fall asleep on my keyboard. Brian, you have recently taken over Monga, so you're now part of the PHP League. Welcome to the league.
Thank you.
Yeah. We haven't got any initiation rights. I think normally we just get you good and drunk, but I'm not nearby. And we did that before. That time that we all nearly got police tickets. So.
Yep, I remember that one.
Oh, wait, you actually did get.
That was back in March. Yeah, yep.
I didn't get one.
You did too. Did you? Or didn't you?
I did. I got away with it though. They let me off. They felt sorry for me because I was deported.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's some bullshit. It's only $20. Not too bad though.
Yeah, but moving on because we don't condone drinking or getting arrested for drinking outside. What's going on with Monga?
Oh yeah, so I'm like I said, it hasn't been getting the attention that it's been needing. So basically, I used Monga back in the day, maybe a year and a half ago, and actually it might have been still when it was still with Frank before it was indoctrinated into the league. But anyways, I went to go ahead and use it again recently, and then deprecation everywhere, and I was like, whoa. So basically, I started fixing some of the things that were deprecated. You know, the connected property for the Mongo driver, or for the Mongo connection class, was deprecated, and you know, so it was throwing deprecation warnings everywhere. So I went ahead and patched those up, and a few pull requests later, Frank basically asked, like, hey, you want to watch out over this? And I was like, sure. So it was basically a lost puppy on the street. It looked pretty desperate. Its ribs were showing, and I felt really bad. And my apartment building doesn't let pets, so I decided to adopt Monga instead. And now here I am. But basically, so a lot of the other, yeah.
Poor little thing.
Yeah, so the a lot of the other packages in the league are actually pretty good with documentation, and I use them pretty frequently at work and in my free time. And as far as like the GitHub pages, there's been pretty good and helpful, and you know, I corrected a few things across some of the other packages. But what my kind of current plans are is getting some GitHub pages for Monga, and also there's been some batch classes that have been introduced for the Mongo PHP extension as of 1.5, I believe, and basically the plans are to get those on get Monga updated and using those, and kind of have a more bleeding edge release, hopefully. So
that sounds pretty handy. Are there many people helping you with pull requests? Is it just you kind of doing all the work, or are there contributors as well?
I mean, it's kind of been me, but it's been a lot of like low friction, easy stuff, right? Just like kind of, I mean, so there's a lot of coding standard stuff that I initially noticed, and I've been doing a lot of that in Cake as well. I don't know, I think I have OCD or something. But yeah, there hasn't really been any pull requests coming in, but actually Elizabeth Smith, I forget how to pronounce her online username, like Aura Rose, she actually just reported an issue earlier today about replica sets and failover in regards of reattempting a write. So there was that at least today, but there hasn't really any pull requests coming in, but hopefully.
Can I make a feature request?
Yeah.
Can you have a shell that takes all of your data from MongoDB and puts it in a real database? All right, I'm done trolling.
I'm just gonna put Jose back on mute because he's not a big old. There we go. No more Jose.
So, in response to Jose, hey man, I'm totally on board with you with that. I mean, pretty much the core of any of my applications are a SQL database, but I tend to use Mongo for some other parts of things.
What are you using it for at the minute? Because if you chat to Jose or any of the SeatGeek boys, they'll say that there's like never any at all reason to use Mongo. But what do you use it for?
So I mean, it makes sense whenever you kind of use it in like a quote unquote data warehousing situation where I don't know, maybe you're scraping a website and what you're getting back from the result is kind of unpredictable, right? You can't necessarily rely upon, you know, what the output of the page is. So as far as that, I use that in that kind of context, and then kind of let the transformers, so to speak, take care of any kind of logic involved around things existing or not. So I've kind of used it in that context in recent history.
That sounds cool. There are two things that I said I wouldn't really use a while ago, and that was Mongo and Node. But I've just deployed a website using Ghost built on Node.js. So now that I've kind of gone back on my word with Node, I guess I have to start pissing around with Mongo next. I think I used it ages
Yeah.
ago, and then I just thought I could do this in Postgres, so I gave up. But it's something for another day.
Yeah, I mean, I would never personally use it as the central piece of my application. Personally dealing with implicit schemas is always a pain in the ass and kind of weird, but um, I don't know.
Yeah, well, Monga can be the way in to, you can make it so easy for people to work with MongoDB that they actually want to use it. PHP still has this weird thing where everyone has to use MySQL for everything all the time, and it's a bit of a weird one,
No, let's just put it all in Redis. It's a good idea. Trust me. You won't lose any of your data ever.
No, as long as you have infinite memory, it'll be fine. Which
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't?
just keep dragging that sliding scale up on Heroku, and then you have.
You can download free memory from the internet, I'm pretty sure. Have you not done that? I do that for my servers all the time.
I need to get me.
By the way, I do operations at work, so.
Is that on the same website that says you can take a photograph using just your monitor? No camera required, just your monitor. Seen that one?
I have not. That's awesome.
You go on there and you like stare at the screen for a really long time. You just stare at it, and then you're staring, waiting for it to happen, and then just like this massive fucking demonic face just jumps out. Says, "Of course you can, you fucking idiot." Bit of a scary one.
Professor level trolling.
Yeah, it's pretty well done. I've pretty much forgotten everything we're going to talk about. Usually I ask people to to recommend some sort of service, but seeing as I never remember to actually remind anyone that they should be telling us about services, it's a bit unfair. I have got one thing to tell you folks about. TeamTreehouse.com. I did a course for them, and it's finally out. And what's really funny is so Team Treehouse is kind of like Code Academy or anything like that, where you can learn how to code in different languages and stuff. I did a course for them, and it was on camera, and there was a auto prompt, and it was proper. I was wearing makeup and shit, like everything. Very scary. So what's great is that if you want to go and learn about PHP standards and best practices, then you can watch my video my video series teaching you how to do that. If you don't care about PHP standards and best practices, but you just want to see me looking like I'm freaking out on a camera, then you can do that too. Have either of you guys seen any of the photographs of me just looking terrified on a camera?
Is that the one where you're just like sitting there all like prim and proper, and you've been like passing that around for like months?
So my display picture is me just chilling in front of a camera, and that one's fine. But there's a few where I'm just kind of stood there waiting for the camera to start, or just kind of like in between frames, where I'm just like.
I saw one with Chris recently, and that was pretty good.
Oh yeah. So the photographs going around of me are just me with my hands together, looking all proper at the camera, looking really nervous. And then there's Chris just being like, "Yo, boom, 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 what's up?" And I'm like, "Damn you, Chris, you all got to look awesome." I think there's a few outtakes somewhere. I'll try and get the bloopers reel off them for me. But I did this course, and it was pretty cool. It's basically me just reading out phptherightway.com for an hour. But
They pay you for that?
Yeah.
Do you have to be? How British do you have to be for that?
So I can't do proper accent where I'm all fast talking and like that. But if I talk like this, then everyone seems to really understand. The really hard thing that they kept saying was that like I can't talk fast, can't use the accent. So I've got to slow it down and sound a bit more neutral like this. But the problem is if I start talking like this, then I don't have any character. And they're like, "Can you try and sound more exciting?" I'm like, "No, you either get fast talking Bristolian farmer prick, or you get like incredibly posh and proper BBC news reporter." But there's no, I can't be energetic and sound posh as hell. It's really hard to do. But anyone that doesn't understand about English accents wouldn't know what I'm talking about. You guys have both heard me after a few ciders. I get a little bit different.
I've heard you before a few ciders. You're still a little different.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so check out the teamtreehouse.com library called Standards and Best Practices. There's a coupon code that you can use when you register, which is all caps Phil Sturgeon 50, and that will get you 50% off the first month, I think. You don't have to just use use it for my. You can use it for anything on Team Treehouse, and you get all of the courses for the same price. So that's my little advert. I don't actually get anything from that course now. I don't get any revenues or profits or referrals or anything. It's a one-off payment, but
It's all about getting your face out there. Your beautiful, beautiful face. I'm sure your mother couldn't be prouder.
oh no, I mean they paid me to do it. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean now.
Right, I'm just saying at this point, like I'm not too worried about whether you sign up or not, but it might be helpful. Is what I'm getting at.
To be fair, the Team Treehouse things have been pretty good. The times that I've used them for like picking up something really quickly, iOS and Android stuff, pretty useful then. So I know that they put out good content.
Yeah, they've got some great videos. There's Chris Harchess is doing a bunch of stuff about testing. That's going to be coming up soon, and it looks pretty cool. They've got a bunch of other stuff on there. I've been learning about Ruby, funnily enough, because I'm starting this job where I do a lot of Ruby and Go, funnily enough, and I'm just kind of brushing up on my Ruby skills because a lot of things have changed in Ruby 2 and Rails 4, and they've got content that covers all of that. So I'm just going through it and like teaching myself a bit of Ruby, teaching myself a bit of Rails. Like I'm doing it on and off, but really brushing up. So I'd recommend that anyone listening to this could grab it. Go and look at my course. Go and look at some Rails. Go and look at some fucking JavaScript or whatever. But there's a lot of information on here that you can definitely make use of. And on that note, I reckon I've hoard things out enough that we can probably call it a day, guys. What do you reckon?
It's fine with me.
Sweet. I'm going to be asleep 1 second after I hit stop broadcast. This is happening right now.
Would you like me to drink another cider in your honor?
The whole episode I've just been getting lower and lower, and I'm just kind of falling off this chair now. It's been great to have you guys on the show. Jose, I will see you in 2 weeks. I'll be back in New York soon. All right.
All right. Proper cider drink?
Proper cider drink. And Brian, I will see you never. So thanks for looking after Monga. That's it. You do all the hard work and you don't get any of the credit. Yeah, so goodbye, guys. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Adios.